Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
We are moving on. My apologies to everybody waiting to talk about the royal family. I've been reminded that it is unlikely to disappear from the conversational agenda during the rest of the day on LBC, so it would be a little bit greedy of me to talk of little else on the programme. Also, you know, I've got a problem now. I don't know quite how to do these topics anymore. It doesn't really matter whether you believe me or not. I know that I'm telling you the truth when I say I really, really, really hoped that I would be wrong, or that I was receiving erroneous information, or that events would move in a way that meant that some of the predictions that were made on this programme over the course of the last two and a bit years would not come true. They get reverse engineered, of course. So warnings about the economic impact of a leave vote. People now say, oh, well, that was wrong, wasn't it? Those warnings were wrong. And they completely overlook the fact that Mark Carney moved very, very strong and very, very fast to shore up the economic, to minimise the economic impact of a leave vote. So these little observations are, well, I'm not going to stop making them. Just because so many people have got their fingers in their ears doesn't mean that those of us telling the truth should give up hope. So I genuinely thought that they'd get their act together. I'm not going to lie to you now. When we started talking about the possibility of huge queues building up at our borders in the event of a no-deal Brexit. And that isn't what's even happening now. I mean, today's news is they didn't even know what backstop meant when they agreed to it. Theresa May, as you heard in the news headlines, has said she'll never agree to a backstop that might be indefinite. She already has. That's what a backstop means. It means if this thing that you promise will materialise never materialises, then this thing stays in place. The backstop gets removed when you explain how we can have frictionless trade at the Irish border. So it's so weird that they keep saying it's really easy to do. Owen Paterson, the man that was outthought by badgers. Owen Paterson has an article in The Guardian today, which is yet another cavalcade of fanciful nonsense, claiming that it's really easy to do frictionless trade at the Irish border. In which case, why do they care about the backstop? You see, I know this is, but it might be boring, but I think this is really important. These are the moments where I understand why we've ended up where we've ended up, because it's a curious combination of denial and arrogance. So you take someone like Owen Paterson, who is really putting in a shift at the moment for Nadine Dorries's crown as the most ignorant person about Brexit in the House of Commons. And his arguments today about how you can have an Irish border, they're not persuasive or convincing or evidentially based, but let's pretend they are. Let's pretend that you really can fix the Irish border problem easily. Why have they then got a problem with a permanent backstop? Because the backstop is what is there until the Irish border problem is fixed, right? This is the transition agreement originally, and then until we have the Irish border agreement fixed, the backstop would remain in place indefinitely, except it will definitely be removed when the Irish border problem is fixed. So what the Brexit extremists are doing now is simultaneously arguing that the Irish border can be fixed really easily and that the backstop can't possibly be agreed to indefinitely. Now, those two positions are logically inconsistent, because if they genuinely believe that the Irish border can be fixed really easily, and they understand that the backstop only gets removed when the Irish border has been fixed, how can they simultaneously have a problem with both phenomena? How can they simultaneously be arguing that the Irish border is easily fixed or a red herring or somehow being exaggerated, a position that displays almost unbelievable levels of ignorance, both historical and political? And I say almost unbelievable because after Brexit, everything's believable now when it comes to ignorance and incompetence. Absolutely everything is believable. You simultaneously argue that it's easy to fix and that this thing you've agreed to do until it's fixed categorically mustn't be allowed to stay in place indefinitely. And still some people think this is a good... Well, lots and lots of people still don't see how nuts this all is. So the champions of Brexit, the Brextremists, the Brexists now, are simultaneously telling us that it's really, really easy to fix the Irish border, but that thing we've promised to do until the Irish border is fixed, we absolutely can't promise to keep that in place indefinitely. That doesn't make any sense, does it? And then you think back to people like Jason and Kieran, the van driver, and Graham, the fellow that's for the three blokes in a pub, actually, who do a podcast about Brexit, and their understanding of international borders and their warnings. Even I sat here, even after the programme became something of a rallying point for rational analysis of Brexit, somewhat at odds with most, not all, but most of the rest of the British media, even after we became a bit of a rallying point for rational, evidence-based facts about Brexit, even I sometimes thought those lads were getting carried away. Because I just thought, as I've told you a billion times now, that the grown-ups would sort it out. And all of these people surely understand what they're talking about more than Kieran does. And yet, every time he spoke to me, I'd think, no, he really gets it. I think he's on Inside Out on the BBC on Monday night, actually going to the border with a Leave voter and a film crew. I have an inkling of what transpires, but I don't want to issue any spoilers. Make sure you watch it. And the more he explained, the more I realised he really knew what he was talking about. And then yesterday we discovered that the big hauliers, the big road haulage companies, and the lobby group for the whole industry have signed NDAs with the government. And these are the moments, sorry to still be going on about it, nobody thought more than I did that I would have parked this lorry by now on the M26. I thought by now that it would have somehow been dealt with. And when we said, well, if they don't do X by Y, then the M26 will be turned into a lorry park, I thought, yeah, that's just not going to happen. But once cognitive dissonance becomes government policy, once absolute denial of observable fact gets into the mainstream, all bets are off. So it's unfixable. It's still, in the back of my mind, unlikely. But the fact that the government is now putting in the infrastructure, which will involve portaloos and paint on the road and stuff like that, so that lorry drivers stuck on the motorway for hours will be able to relieve themselves in facilities that have been erected next to the road. Just should have put that on the side of a bus. Seriously, vote Brexit, turn your back garden into a bog. That is happening now. So and is this how you do it if you are a Brexiter? And I mean a nice one, like John in Madrid. I don't mean gammon. I mean someone who does have a functioning brain, someone who did sort of put trust in the wrong people, someone who isn't a massive idiot stroke racist. If you're still clinging to this, are you still just thinking, yeah, all right, so they're preparing the M26 to be a lorry park, just like the Ramonas and the Romaniacs said they would, and I said that it was Project Fear and Lies, and I didn't believe any of it. And now it is actually happening. So how do you hang on to your convictions now? I think all you've got left is it won't happen, even though it's happening. It won't reach. So if we've learned anything in the last 2.5 years, it's that we should not discount the worst-case scenario on the grounds that surely the nation will not be stupid enough to run blindly into that brick wall, right? I just find this fascinating because it's actually happening. Work has begun. 3 words. Work has begun. So this is where Project Fear becomes Project Fact. Oh, yeah, they're going to turn the M26 into a motorway, apparently. That's the latest I've heard. Work has begun to turn a motorway in southeast England into a parking lot for lorries as part of a plan to prevent traffic chaos in the event of a no-deal Brexit. This from a senior MP who was furious that he wasn't disclosed to local councillors or MPs until hours before work began on Wednesday. Right, there's our first phone-in question. Why not? 0345 6060 973. I want you to tell me, because I don't trust the politicians anymore. I certainly don't trust the professional commentators and pundits who sold Brexit to a gullible nation. I trust you. You tell me why you think the government didn't tell anyone that they were going to do this. All right? Give me a call now. I don't really know. I can speculate, but I'd rather listen to you speculate. 0345 6060 973. Okay? Local councillors and MPs were not told until hours before work began on Wednesday. So the M26 is going to be closed all night every night for more than a month to get it ready. This is in the run-up to Christmas while the roadworks take place. They are turning a motorway into a lorry park because the queues at the borders will be so long. Okay? Fact. Event. Work has begun. Why do you think they didn't tell local councillors or MPs? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. And how do you, and if you're, still persuaded that we're doing the right thing, how do you process this bit of information now? All the people that told you only a madman would contemplate leaving the single market. Absolutely nobody is talking about leaving the single market. We could be like Norway. We could be like Switzerland. Even Vote Leave, the official campaign, put out an advert which quoted Tony Blair as saying we could be like Switzerland, we could stay in the single market and the customs union. And Vote Leave, of course, now insist furiously that everybody knew they were voting to leave the single market and the customs union. Owen Paterson this week attempted to argue with a straight face that everybody knew that they were voting to leave the single market and the customs union because they didn't believe him when he said that we wouldn't have to. They believed the other side. It's the first time in I think, in modern political history that anybody has claimed that they won a vote because the voters believed the opposition. Why did you win? Oh, because the voters believed the opposition. But you called the opposition liars. Yeah, I know, but they didn't believe us. They voted for us because they know we were lying. That's what Owen Paterson has reduced you to if you're a Brexit voter. He's reduced you to a person that voted for something because you knew the people telling you to vote for it were liars. Work has begun to turn a motorway into a lorry park. Think about it. 2 questions. Why do you think they didn't tell us? 0345 6060 973. Second question, how do we process this now? If you're one of these people who absolutely swore blind it wouldn't happen, and I still hope it doesn't, but the government is doing it now, how do you process this? How do you hang on to it? The idea that this is a good idea when all the things that Project Fear predicted are now turning into Project Fact. And we still haven't left. And this deal that they keep talking about isn't a deal at all. It's a withdrawal agreement. If we agree a withdrawal agreement by the end of next March, 10 new negotiations open immediately for the United Kingdom. And anything that we want to do under WTO terms has to be approved by 163 other sovereign nations. Oh, boy. The local MPs are furious. Chris Grayling reassured one of them just weeks ago that this would definitely not happen. But it's happening, as we explained, or as was explained to us, inevitably happening as a consequence of people thinking that no deal Brexit might happen. And it's not no deal, it's no agreement on a withdrawal. That's when the deal negotiations actually start. And you think we're near the end. We're not even near the beginning of the end. We're not even near the end of the beginning. So why? 2 questions. Why do you think the government did this without telling local councillors and MPs? 0345 6060 973. And is anyone prepared to tell me, straight, hand on heart, that this is good? And they like it, and they either knew it was going to happen or they're supremely comfortable about the fact that it is happening. Phone lines are open. Angela is in High Wycombe. Angela, what would you like to say?
This is a strategic communications plan that is being rolled out. That's what we see. You don't drift out information that isn't going to be received well. You plan for it, and then you open the dam hatches, and it all comes going in one big flush. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. This is not a last-minute thought. This has been thought out, planned out, and now we're seeing the impact of it.
So they keep it stumm for so long, and they don't tell politicians and councillors because they're trying to minimise the impact of it?
Absolutely. The last thing you want when you have bad news of this magnitude is for people to get organized on the receiving end. And that's why, from what I understand, nobody was informed until the works are ready to begin.
Yes.
And then people have to plan for other activities instead of actually debating whether it should happen or not.
So it's almost as if the government knows that things are going to be much, much worse than they're publicly announcing, but they also know that if they announce it, their ability to minimise the impact of that much, much worse damage will be compromised because people will start complaining before they've actually started doing the things they need to do to minimise the damage.
This is classic damage control. That's what the government is doing. They have a plan. They know that.
But they're doing classic damage control. Sorry for interrupting you. They're doing classic damage control while denying damage.
Exactly. How else are you going to continue with the plan forward if you can't step back and say that what you did was wrong? You have to minimize the damage and the impact of what you know you have to roll out.
You're surprisingly chirpy, considering the gravity of what you're describing.
Well, let's put it this way. I own a medical device company, and we import medical devices, and we sell mostly to the NHS. Brexit is of high impact to my business and to everybody we serve in the NHS. This is something that has a much higher impact than I think anybody could have really understood from the get-go. And I certainly think that, we have two choices at this point. We can either bury our head in the sand and wish everything is going to be fine, or we can try to plan for what's going to happen.
Or we can call the whole thing off.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Yes.
We got a letter as a supplier to the NHS almost a month ago saying that the government was considering stockpiling medical devices and pharmaceutical drugs. But to me, that's not a contingency plan. It's more of an emergency plan. That sounds like war to me. But the interesting part is that we haven't had any more information after that.
And you think that's deliberate?
Of course it is. Otherwise, why would you run out a big communication campaign to say, we'll get back to you. We might have to stockpile your medicines and your medical devices and then not come back with further information. And we're, 6 months away?
Obviously you're right, unless someone wants to ring in and explain why you're wrong. But you're not exactly cheering me up. I'm not going to pretend, because in a way, this theory I have that eventually the grown-ups will take over and everything will be all right.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah,
I really don't
I think you're telling me now.
Any opinions about this?
No, I hear you, but I think what you're telling me now is that the grown-ups are actually simply preparing to. They're sort of making us a crutch. They've decided that we're definitely chopping our leg off, and we're going to make a crutch, but we're not going to tell the public that we're making a crutch because they're not yet ready to accept that they voted to chop their own leg off.
Wasn't there information about a week or so ago that the chief of police in United Kingdom had been called in and had to present an emergency plan for riots?
That rings a bell. I know that the civil service is advertising for emergency workers to deal with post-Brexit impact. But why wouldn't? Because they're caught between a rock and a hard place. So you sort of find yourself wondering, why wouldn't the government make clear how awful it is? But they've spent over 2 years insisting, A, that it wouldn't be awful, and B, that they'd be able to deliver something palatable. I'm not feeling it, Angela. What you're saying is
you and me both.
No, but I don't quite understand. Go on, carry on.
Just from a pure business perspective, just look at it as a pure business perspective. If there were, let's say that if there were large amounts of money involved in this for any sort of reason, the only way to really make a fortune is in a volatile market where you can place your bets in a high-risk strategy that may have the biggest pullout. And if you can then manipulate that market so that it does what you want, that's when we talk about the big wins, right?
You've lost me now. I'm not very clever at this sort of stuff. No, I mean it.
Let's put it this way.
Go on.
If you knew that the pound would be stable, you knew that there will be nothing that changes your competitive landscape for your product X, Y, or Z in the next 10 years. And you're looking at that thinking, that's not going to be all that exciting. How do you stir that market up best?
Well, you make it really unstable and unpredictable.
Really unstable.
But you could lose a lot of money in that market.
You sure could, unless, of course, you were one of the ones who designed that outcome from the start.
Ooh, it's gone a bit David Icke.
Let's put it this way. My dad always said to me, if you're ever going to bid for a tender, you don't wait until the tender comes out. You start by designing the tender.
Yes, of course. And by people who, if, for example, someone was photographed pointing at a graph of how far the pound had plummeted on the night of the referendum vote, that might suggest that some people had, in fact, planned to make a killing out of the whole process from the very start.
Wouldn't that be clever? Wish I was one of them.
Angela, I almost wish you hadn't phoned.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
glad.
sorry.
I said almost, Angela, almost. So we're left wondering Less why the government waited until the last possible minute to announce this. The simple answer, as Angela reminds us, is to minimise the response. And now it's a fait accompli. It's being presented to us. Imagine if we'd had a month of arguing about it. Phone 0345 6060 973. Tell me whether you think the government should turn the M26 into a lorry park. And it becomes a debatable issue. It becomes something that they might not do. They know they have to do it, but they can't tell us they have to do it, because that would involve telling us that all the promises that Brexit has made were lies, and all the Project Fear proposals and predictions are coming true. So just give me a call and tell me why you're still cool with it. Do you think she's read The Great Gatsby? I mean, it's a very odd novel to be quoting from at a royal wedding, a book which is in many ways a sort of indictment of shallow materialism and dubious wealth, the suggestion that the sort of moral decline of the feckless rich it's a very odd thing. And whose smile was that? Is that Gatsby's smile that it's describing, or is it the fellow that cons all of Gatsby's mates? Right, I mean, I'm not a betting man, usually because I'm too lazy to remember to place a bet. But if I was a betting man, I would bet. Who read what's the sister called? Beatrice. I thought that was a bloke until last week. I'm pretty confident Beatrice hasn't read The Great Gatsby. They've just read a passage about a smile that they thought was really nice, and he smiles so like Jack. This could just be Jack, Uji. This could be Jack. Listen, I read it to you. I would be amazed if they'd read that novel and decided that that was a suitable passage to quote at a wedding. But then again, they're not just kids, are they? I think I'm in danger of becoming too nice. It would ruin the nature of this programme. 4 minutes after 12 is the time. They're turning the M26 into a parking lot. In the event of Brexit negotiations failing to deliver a withdrawal agreement by the end of March. They have to. If you want to know why, go to even Switzerland, actually. That's where Kieran has made a film for the BBC. I've turned that bloke into a star, honestly, and he's been in touch to tell me it's not coming out. It's out on the 29th of this month. Kieran travelled to the Swiss border with a lever and an exporter, and well, let's just say that scales fell from eyes, and they weren't Kieran's eyes. And now we learn that they're turning this motorway into a lorry park, and I just want to know how you hang on to the idea that you're right and that it's a good idea. And I wonder if anyone will look me in the eye and tell me that they knew this was going to happen and this is actually what they voted for. Because we've done that with all the other stuff, like the getting poorer, being less safe, losing freedom of movement. You all voted. I've constantly been told, yes, I absolutely voted for that. Yes, categorically and absolutely. So did anyone vote for this? Especially people in Kent. Also, how will it affect you? Because they do it during... I had a couple of texts saying they often do this during emergencies. What are you going on about? If you need me to explain, I'm almost certainly wasting my breath. The crucial word in that tweet there is emergency. It happens in emergencies. This isn't going to be an emergency. This is going to be normal. So that's why it's a big deal. Operation Stack, we talked about, that is what happens during unpredicted spikes in activity. It is an emergency situation, so you have emergency measures in place. This is not an emergency. This is reality. This is normal. That's why they're preparing for it, and that's why it's a big deal. But as I said, the greatest of love and respect, if I have to explain to you the difference between an emergency and a non-emergency, then, well, not only am I wasting my breath, but I've also got a really large bridge for sale. Murdo's in the glorious kingdom of Fife. Murdo, what's going on?
Hi there, how are you getting on? No, all I'd like to say is the government are actually being very prudent, preparing for every eventuality. If there is a no-deal Brexit, they're covered for it. I mean, it's the same. I live along here in Fife, and there's a nuclear command centre built in the 50s just in case there was a nuclear war. Never needed, so yeah, I think they've been very prudent. So
you're upbeat because you think that you're drawing a parallel between Brexit and a nuclear war, and you're encouraged... You're encouraged that the government...
Not at all. I'm just saying...
Well, that is what you just said. I mean, that is what came out of your mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, there was nuclear command centre...
It's a terrible phone line, Murdo. Can we try and fix the phone line and I'll come... It sounds like you're in the command centre. We'll come back to Murdo imminently. Timothy's in York. Timothy, why do you think they didn't tell the local MPs and council what they were doing?
Oh, I really think that's not a big a big issue at all, this whole M26 car park thing. And any divorce, it's always going to be messy. It was never going to be straightforward, but it's a step in the direction that this country needs to go in.
It was going to be really, really easy, you remember?
No, it wasn't. And
but all the Brexit campaigners said it would be really, really easy. I mean, don't make me read you all the quotes again.
Okay, but that's not why I voted Leave, and it's not why any of the people
The free trade
I know
agreement that we will
Leave.
have to do with the European Union should be one of the easiest in human history. That's Liam Fox. John Redwood, getting out of the EU can be quick and easy. The UK holds most of the cards in any negotiation. That's John Redwood. Here's Farage. To me, Brexit's easy. Here's Gerard Batten. Trade relations with the EU could be sorted out in an afternoon over a cup of coffee. Here's David Davis. We can do deals with our trading partners and we can do them quickly. I would expect the new Prime Minister on the 9th of September, that's 2016, to immediately trigger a large round of global trade deals.
For the World Trade
Boris Johnson, everybody is suddenly
low.
wrangling about the terrors of the world outside. Actually, there are plenty of people who now think the cost of getting out would be virtually nil and the cost of staying in would be very high. Michael Gove, we have 4 years, more or less, between now and the date of the next election. We can easily conclude a new settlement with the EU in that period. Douglas Carswell, I think we could very easily get a better trade deal than we have.
I've never refuted this.
At the moment,
Are we having a discussion?
Paul Nuttall, it will be easy to negotiate a trade deal, and of course it's in the European Union's interest, just as it is. No, I'm just pointing out that when you said nobody said it would be easy, you were mistaken.
No, I'm not on about politicians, career liars like yourself. I mean, you're pushing an agenda, they're pushing an agenda.
Right, okay. So you don't think that any of those people influenced votes? You don't think any of those influenced votes?
You're not a man of the people, James. You live in a nice area which hasn't had any of the negative effects of globalism, of immigration.
Okay, so why do you?
In the real world, James,
mate, we're talking about.
I earn in a month.
We're talking about a 20 kilometre. Well, mate, it's not my fault, is it?
No, it's
that
not.
I've done well and you've done badly. Why are you taking it out on me?
I'm not.
So talk to me. Okay, let's pretend that I'm the most important person in the room, and you tell me now how Brexit's going to improve your life.
Okay, it's a long-term strategy. How I see it, I want people on lower skilled jobs. Is
that you?
No, it's not me.
So how's it going to improve your life? Because you've insisted on talking about mine, so now I'm interested in how it's going to improve your life, Timothy.
In many ways, I don't.
Well, let's count. Let me count the ways.
It's more to do with how I see the world and how I see myself and how I see countries. And you've clearly.
So how's it going to improve your life then?
I won't have to deal with all of the people like you. So
you think somehow Brexit will involve me retiring, and you don't have to deal with me, Timothy. What model radio do you have?
I don't have a radio. I use my phone.
Okay, so if you know the button on the top left of your keypad on your phone, if you just turn it off, then you don't have to deal with me.
This is what I wanted to speak about.
You don't have to deal with me at all.
I wanted to ask you why you're a globalist and why.
What does globalist mean, Timothy? What does globalist mean?
It means all different people living in all different countries. It means no trade barriers. It means no borders. It means terrible things.
Right. Should we go back? Because this is a bit tricky for you, obviously. So let's go back to how your life is going to improve, Timothy.
My life will improve by not having bloody rude neighbours.
Yes.
My whole town changed.
You're incredibly rude.
The last 10 years...
You're incredibly rude.
The last 10 years has seen my town change completely.
Yes. What town is that?
York.
York. So after Brexit, what are your neighbours going to do?
Well, personally, I would like to see a lot of the Europeans here that are doing jobs such as labouring, warehouse work. I would like to see them go home.
Okay.
It's not because I dislike them as people.
It's been promised that they won't have to. It's been promised that they won't have to.
I know. But
so how is your life going to improve?
It's more of a moral point for me. It's like
the moral point you just made is that we should discriminate against people based upon their origins rather than their conduct or their character.
I think that we should put natives first.
Right. Okay. So how would that improve your life? What is it that you have been prevented from doing because you're a native?
I haven't been prevented. You're not seeing the point on purpose.
No. Well, tell me what the point is.
The point is that our country has changed a lot since 2004, free.
Yes, and you think for the worse, and I'm
I
asking...
think it's changed for the worse.
Yes, I know that.
Yes.
I've understood that bit. It's the rest I'm struggling with. So how is your life going to improve?
My life will improve if our country starts going back to how it was. That's how it was
when?
When I was younger.
Oh, how old are you now?
This EU invasion, before
how old are you now?
Migrant crisis
yes, how old are you now?
Mainland Europe.
Yes, Brexit isn't going to stop refugees fleeing Syria, but how old are you now?
They're not refugees, and actually, if you...
Okay, Timothy.
If you actually...
How old are you now, Timothy? How old are you now?
That's besides the point.
No, it isn't, because you said you want to go back to how things were when you were young, so I'm wondering how old you are now.
I'm 35.
So what year are you thinking was the halcyon days, the sort of rose-tinted memories that you have?
No, that's the thing, James. What do you see about the future?
So you were born in 1983?
No.
So
James,
what year are you thinking of when you say you want to... No, Timothy, you're talking about the past. I've already talked about the future. I asked you how your life was going to improve, and you couldn't tell me. And you said your life was going to improve by going back to what it was like when you were a child. So we're talking about the past because that's what you want the future to be. You can't change horses now. So what year are you thinking of when you say I want to go back to that?
I would like to go back to the 90s, ideally, personally.
Which bit of the 90s?
All of the 90s.
So you want to go back to all of the 90s? What do you think? No, Timothy, it doesn't work.
If we remained, I'll tell you what the future is.
Okay, mate.
The euro will collapse.
Yes.
The debt crisis in the South Med. All of those countries are being terrorised economically by Germany.
Right. Why are they all seeing?
Have you been to Greece recently?
Yes, I was there I was there about 3 months ago. Why do you think all these countries? Well, hang on. When were you last in Greece, Timothy?
I was in Greece 2 months ago.
Okay, which bit? Which bit, Timothy?
I was on the island of Corfu.
Well, you were on a holiday in Greece?
Yes.
Okay, and this is your evidence of a country that's collapsing?
No, oh, you fool, that's not what I'm saying. Have you not seen the state of all of those countries? They're just not good, are they? They're not on the same standard as us, and they're being held back by Germany.
Why has support for the European Union in all of these countries gone up since the Brexit vote, do you think?
According to whom?
Okay. Let's try another one then. In what ways do you think your life will improve, apart from your optimistic belief that there might be fewer foreigners in York?
It's not entirely that.
No, that's why I said what else?
I just don't want to be involved in Europe. I don't see myself as a European.
But you just went to Corfu for your holiday. You can't get much more involved than that.
And I lived in Australia.
Well done.
And I've travelled Asia.
Well
and
done.
I love those countries.
Doesn't that make you a globalist?
No, it doesn't. It makes me a traveller. It makes me an Englishman.
Okay.
That's what the English do. We travel.
All right, Timothy. You know you voted to stop English people having freedom of movement across 27 EU countries.
I would never want to work or live in Europe.
Okay.
I would only like to live
that's fine.
or work in English-speaking ex-colonies, such as Canada, Australia,
but you hate it here.
New Zealand. I don't hate it here.
Well, you have spent most of this call describing the country in the most negative and pejorative of terms. You don't sound like a person who's very happy to be here.
It's terrible.
Okay.
It's terrible.
Because of all the foreigners?
No, because of everything.
Well, what else? Apart from the foreigners, when you walk down the street, Timothy, we need to calm it. Okay. I'm going to try again to examine some words that have come out of your mouth. When you walk down the street, it's terrible, it's just terrible, but you're not talking about the foreigners. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the state of everything.
Yes, well, so for example?
For example, the state of the roads, funnily enough.
So you think that Brexit is going to fix potholes?
It's about...
Timothy, mate, go and have a cup of tea. Thank you very much for calling. I'm sorry you're so cross about everything, and I'm sorry you see me as personally representative of all the problems that have rendered your life so unhappy and so unsatisfactory. But please trust me when I tell you, it's going to get worse. They're turning the M26 into a lorry park. I think we can all agree, we hope it doesn't turn out to be needed. But they're getting it ready by Christmas, because if it is needed, it's going to be needed on the 1st of April. And they are making a lot of people sign non-disclosure agreements. Even charities now are signing non-disclosure agreements if they want to talk to Esther McVey about their concerns regarding universal credit. But specifically to Brexit, they're making hauliers and companies expressing fears to the government about what's going to happen, sign non-disclosure agreements. And the plans to turn the M26 into a lorry park were enacted without telling any local or national politicians, any MPs or councillors. It is 21 minutes after 12, and I think Matt probably puts it best. Timothy of York, 35, who earns £2,500 a month and wants his neighbours to go home so he can travel the world like a good Englishman. You just realise when you talk to fellas like that the reason is a waste of everybody's time. It is quite incredible now, the scale of the delusion. But there we go. Onwards and upwards. Richard's in Windsor. Richard, were you at the wedding?
I sadly didn't get an invite, no.
You're joking?
No, not an invite, no.
Don't they know who you are?
No, this is icing. I mean, I'll try and keep the nation entertained like the last caller, but I don't know if I'll be quite as entertaining as him, but I'll give it a go.
Go on.
Just when people talk about let's do a deal like Switzerland, and I'm a lorry driver, and I used to go to Switzerland, and people say let's do a deal like Switzerland. Switzerland is an absolute nightmare to get goods into in a lorry. Now, a lot of people probably don't realise this. I'll just quickly give you a quick run through.
I mean, before you do that, I'll just interrupt you and say getting a deal like Switzerland is way better than anything we can hope for now, because Switzerland is in Schengen, and we've already made it absolutely clear that the one thing we're absolutely not going to let British people keep is freedom of movement. So you're right. Yeah. To explain, as you're about to, that Switzerland is a lot more complicated than the people who punted Switzerland as a possible deal for us realised. But Switzerland is our dream now, mate. Switzerland is Shangri-La. Switzerland is the Emerald City at the end of the Yellow Brick Road. Switzerland is something we will look at in 2 years' time and dream of achieving, even though it's all the things that you're about to tell us.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lovely country to drive around, but to get into. First of all, if you've got goods on, you've got to go to Folkestone, a place called Stop 24, and go to your paperwork stamped, and that takes about an hour. Basically, you're clearing, you're exiting British customs at Folkestone. And then you drive off through Calais, down through France, lovely. And then you get to the border at Basle-St. Louis. Well, there's many borders in Switzerland, but that's one of the most common ones from France. And you can take about an hour to queue off the motorway into the holding pen, lorry park, if you will. So then you've got your paperwork and your passport and your T-forms and CMRs, which is like paperwork for your goods. And then you've got to go register your lorry in Switzerland. So you've got to go with your V5 and register your lorry. Then you've got to go and clear French customs to clear the goods out of France, which takes anywhere between half an hour and an hour. And then once you've got your little stamps on your paperwork, you've got to walk to like a big place, like a block of flats effectively, and they're all little agents in there, little companies, and they're Swiss, and every company have got their own little agent they deal with. And you handle your paperwork in there, and you can sit there from an hour to 6 hours, depending on what goods you've got, because obviously your goods have got to meet their regulations. And when you finally get your stamps and all your stamps, get your lorry and drive off in Switzerland, lovely dovely. But yes, it could take anywhere between 2 hours on a good day to 8-9 hours on a bad day. Now, bear in mind, Switzerland, compared to what we import as a country, is quite small. Yeah. It's going to be, but it's just going to be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, I know. How do you process the fact that so many people don't know and still insist that it's, I don't know, a little bit of a temporary problem? Or how are you? I mean, because the mistake we made, and if I'd known about the NDAs, the non-disclosure agreements that people like your boss will have had to sign if they were going to go into Downing Street and talk to them about Brexit, I would have just queued up lorry drivers and van drivers and people who do this for a living, queued you up almost as far back as they're going to be on the M26 come May, because you know what you're talking about. So I'm just interested psychologically, because I find it very frustrating, obviously, but I'm learning all the time. You're simply describing the reality of your professional experience, and you have people like Jacob Rees-Mogg or Nadine Dorries telling you that they know more about your livelihood than you do. And I mean, if I get frustrated, what do you get?
Yeah, extremely frustrated, because we see there's like the little people, we haven't got much of a voice. But it all goes down to whether it's people being naive, but they walk to Tesco's and they've got a pint of milk and they've got a loaf of bread, so everything will be all right. People don't really understand the process it goes through. Now, nearly everything you touch, everything you drive, everything you live in, at some point in its life has been on a lorry, whether it be bricks to your house, a car, your pen, everything at some point in its journey has been on a lorry. Some people, they just can't process that. They just think that floorboards are made at B&Q and Tesco's bake the bread.
No, but even if they did recognise how little of what we have in front of us every day is something that's sort of sprung fully formed from the soils of Albion, they won't need to or want to understand the complexities of what you've just described. So 2 hours on a good day, 8 to 9 hours on a bad day to cross from France into Switzerland. What happens when you cross from France into Germany?
You just drive.
Mate, if we'd set that up, you couldn't have delivered the punchline any better than you just did.
I say it's great. You could drive. You get off the boat of France. You can go France, turn left at Calais. 20 minutes you're in Belgium, Holland, Germany. Yes, you've got to have little boxes in the window for the different countries have different road tax, and you've got to pay different road taxes. But you can pretty much drive all around Europe, into Spain, no problem, all through Spain. Pay your tolls at the peages. But Switzerland is just it's something different, and people strive to let's be Switzerland, and well, if that's what we're striving for, then good luck.
We're not striving. I mean, I buy your sort of sanguine approach to matters, but of course we're not striving for Switzerland. Switzerland got ruled out very, very early on because Switzerland has freedom of movement. It's actually got more freedom of movement than we've got. It's in Schengen. But that really was. I was obviously hoping that Richard would say exactly what he said there. How do you get across from France to Germany? You just drive. How do you get from France to Switzerland? 2 hours on a good day, 8 to 9 hours on a bad. And that's a country, of course, that imports a fraction of what we import as a nation. But still, I can't do it anymore. I can't do the fish passports joke because it's happening now. And even I hoped that it wouldn't. Even I think I believed somewhere deep down. And it still might stop, but the fact that we're getting this close to the wire, and still there's no cause for concern. And don't forget that what Richard just described, is not relevant to the simple, specific issue of this motorway. That's relevant to everything. That situation, if we don't get a withdrawal agreement in place, that becomes our reality immediately. If we do get our withdrawal agreement in place, that becomes our reality when the backstop that Theresa May's just pledged will not be infinite lifts. So, again, you've got people arguing, we can't have an infinite backstop for the Irish border. The same people telling you the Irish border is really easy to fix. It's coming up to 12:29. 0345 60 60 973 is the number that you need. I guess I would like to hear from you if you are in that part of the world. What will it mean to you? You'll struggle to get through at the moment, but we'll try and free up a couple of phone lines. We'll struggle to get through. What will happen on your patch, in your bit of Kent? I think they're probably going to have to do stuff to the M20 as well, aren't they? Not just the M26, but I think the infrastructure's probably in place more already on the M20 because of Operation Stack. How does it affect your... For example, I live near the M40. If that were to shut and it were to back up near me, even if the A4, which is a big road, a big A road near me, a big 6-lane A road, I mean, it affects everything from the school run to whether or not I can pop out to buy some mushrooms for tea. Do you see what I mean? I know I should be driving less, but everything gets affected if a motorway becomes a lorry park, surely. Or maybe not. I'm not the king of motoring, as regular listeners will attest. It's 12:30, and it is now government policy to prepare the M26 in Kent to become an enormous lorry park. Richard, our last caller, who is a lorry driver, but obviously doesn't know as much about lorry driving as Jacob Rees-Mogg does, explains that even Switzerland, which retains membership of both, I mean, it's a signatory to the Schengen Treaty, and I always get confused now. Is it in the customs union or the single market? But I mean, it has freedom of movement more pertinently, and it can still take someone like Richard 8 or 9 hours to get over the border with a full cargo. And still, people like Owen Patterson are publishing newspaper articles about how the Irish border will be really, really easy to fix. We've now gone absolutely tonto, haven't we? And I don't know that it's ever going to stop. Jordan is in Foon. That's our second call from Denmark this week.
Hi.
What would you like to say, Jordan? Hello.
I listened to you. I worked in London for 3 years, and before I moved here. And
you don't know Patrick, do you know Patrick in Foon, who rang last week?
No.
How am I picking up listeners in Denmark? How's that happening?
Well, Well, I'm from the UK.
Of course. No, it's great to have you here. I don't want to sound ungrateful. I bet you were amazed I pronounced it correctly, weren't you?
Yeah, well, I did. Yeah, I told your producer. So.
Oh, did you? Oh, well, I already knew because I've got another caller in Foon. Carry on. What do you want to say?
No worries. Look, I tuned in today because I haven't paid attention to the UK and what's going on with Brexit in a while, but I tuned in for some reason today and heard that last caller you had, I think the truck driver, who was talking about Switzerland.
Yes.
And I think if previous few callers are talking about, what are their opinions on Brexit. What a lot of people really don't understand is, from me moving here, I now export. I'm working for a large brewer who's exporting a large amount of beer across different borders.
Carlsberg.
And at the moment, my job, my job is pretty simple at the moment because when I need to export to a different country in Europe, I don't have to deal with any litigation, legality. As your previous caller said there, if you need to adhere to certain regulations of, for example, in France, they have certain ways that they need to have their products on the shelves and display certain pieces of information, like most countries. But they don't have to go through the large amount of litigation and legality and all the previous, like, for example, if we export to China, it's a huge task in terms of pre-production and pre-planning for something like that. Now, what people have now got to understand is when the UK leaves Europe, they're going to every single business in the country, every single tiny little store, every wholesaler is going to have to redo every single piece of litigation and legality of every single product that they import into the country. And that's a major issue.
Why? I think I understand, but why?
But one of your previous callers a minute ago said, for example, in the free market, in the single market...
because the trade agreement involves a definition and a description of the terms of trade. So we won't be in the trade agreement.
Exactly. So basically, that's why you hear politicians say, we want to trade with Europe, and we want to trade with European countries, and we want to build special deals. And what they mean by these special deals is they need to basically talk about litigation, legality, what they can do, what they can't do.
That's what a deal is.
So on and so forth.
Regulations and laws.
But they haven't got a single clue, really. And I think it's a bit like Theresa May is now having to become an export manager for all of these different countries because she has to approve and so on and so forth. And so does Parliament and blah, blah, blah. That's why it's taking so long. And that's why a lot of this stuff is just pushed under the carpet because they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to tell the UK public about just how much work they now have to do. And, your previous caller, a couple of calls ago, was explaining how he wants everything to go back to how the 1990s will be. Well, guess what? In 5 years' time, when all this Brexit stuff comes through, when you can't buy some of the brands that you've grown up with and you love with, you can blame the people who voted to leave to leave Europe.
So go back to the 90s when we were in the single...
The reason why is because the amount of money that will be made is so marginal, so marginal for companies exporting into the UK that it just won't be worth considering the UK as a company to export to a country to export.
Well, I'm going to call Project Fear here because, because that puts me in the role of telling an international export manager that I know more about international export than you do. But I'm not Nadine Dorries, anyway. So there's no earthly way I'm ever going to claim that I understand your job better than you do. But surely, let me put it this way. What's the best case scenario?
Best case scenario is everyone in Europe goes, cool, let's just work through it. And then they work through it at the fastest pace and there's no hiccups, there's no bumps and everyone's happy and everyone makes money. You've got to remember that businesses need to make money, and if they don't make money, this is why, of course...
But the businesses won't be negotiating the trade agreements.
Well, they'll be negotiating with their partners, of which the trade agreements will determine what they can and can't do. And if they can't do the things they want to be able to do, they won't bother exporting.
So if we don't have, how much worse than current trading arrangements would future trading arrangements have to be for big companies to decide that Britain was no...
Very big conversation, but I don't want to hog the time on your show.
You take all the time you want. We love experts here, Jordan.
I just wanted to give you a flavour of me tuning in to hear this stuff, having come into this industry, which I'm new to, this particular industry, which is why I'm having to personally go through all of this stuff.
Right.
Which is why when I hear people saying, it's that easy, we just make a deal or we just do that. It's just such a major task to just do one country, to consider one company exporting to China just how much work goes into doing just that one thing, and that's to one company in China. Once you've got the base groundworks down, you can obviously go a bit faster, but this is all I wanted to say.
I can tell. No, you can take all the time you want, but you've said plenty. I'm just going to be a little bit simplistic at the end and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how big a mistake do you think Britain has made?
I don't think it's a mistake. I just want to make it clear. I've got my own reasons for whether I think it's good or bad, but I'm not going to. That's not for me to decide. It's already been voted, so my opinion is completely pointless. The point of the matter is that we're now. You are now in a situation. I've decided to leave the UK for several reasons, and you know that's for you. I think it's overcrowded, but. The point of the matter is you've got...
we were getting on so well.
I lived in London and, I just didn't like the fact that you walk through the streets and you got 10 people that bumped directly into you and they couldn't give it... They couldn't care less about who you are, what you do, what's going on in your life. They're just so...
London's always been like that. But anyway, I digress slightly. In terms of what you've learnt and what happens next.
Yeah, basically people have got to... They've got to really come to terms with the fact that when they go to the US, for example, when they travel, you have to get a visa, or you have to get or for example, Canada, you have to get certain travel arrangements, you have to do certain things in certain ways. It's never going to be easy now where you can just go to the airport, jump on a flight to Spain and have a weekend.
Well, I hope you're wrong. I mean, you don't sound as if you're wrong, but I hope that you're wrong, and I hope, again, that the grown-ups somehow manage to avoid what you described before it's too late, although the notion of optimism in this context is very, very hard to hang on to. I guess that's why you just get angrier and angrier and angrier if you're on the other side of this argument, instead of getting sadder and sadder and sadder if you're on this side, because... You're not only angry with yourself, although you probably can't admit that yet, but you're absolutely furious with all the people that told you were doing something silly. And that, I don't know where that anger goes. I mean, we might do that on Monday morning. Where does that anger go? The anger that you should be directing at yourself for being a mug. And I mean that affectionately. You know, you can't help getting mugged. Where does that anger go if you're not going to let it go? I mean, you have to send it to the muggers, don't you? You have to. Not the people who said, don't go down that dark alley tonight, half drunk, because you might get mugged. Don't get cross with them. Get cross with the people who mugged you. Ooh, Declan's in Belfast. Declan, what's going on?
Hi, James. No, I just think all this with the M26 motorway and the NDAs, they've already decided.
I think you might be right. I think you might be right.
Yeah, that's especially here in Northern Ireland. It's not just sad, it's terrifying, because the border posts are going up again. The infrastructure is quietly and subtly getting into place, and they decided long ago. You talk about the grown-ups. Where are the grown-ups? The grown-ups already decided.
Because they knew that there was nothing, once that vote came in, there was absolutely nothing a government could deliver that would keep enough of the people happy enough of the time. So then no deal becomes an inevitability. For the second call in a row, I'm going to say I really, really hope you're wrong. I know that James Patrick, the fellow we met who was way ahead of the game on Russian interference, he's been saying for some time that his sources have described preparations for no deal being in place a very long time ago. And Angela, who rang in earlier, explained perfectly why that would be. They wouldn't tell us that was what was going on, because then there'd be uproar and objection.
Yeah, but the uproar is already, it's here, it's happening. And it is terrifying, as I said. And that guy, what was his name, Tim from before?
Yeah, be gentle, all right? I wasn't...
Okay, no, I mean, he said, well, let's return to the 90s. If we return to the 90s in Northern Ireland, that's terrifying.
We can't return to the 90s, because in the single market and the customs union.
Northern Ireland will be hung out to dry. I mean, that much obvious, I think. That's... in any scenario.
And they've already told us they don't care. I mean, the latest polling for Leave voting Conservatives says they don't even care if Scotland, we wave goodbye to Scotland and Northern Ireland. What did you get back? We got our country back. What country's that? Well, obviously not the United Kingdom or Great Britain. We kind of got England back, although the engine room of England, London, is really, really cross about it. Great work, guys. 12:50 is the time. If you Google quotes about smiles in books, that quote that they just read out at the wedding comes up quite high. I'm I would now put money on the fact that neither of them had ever read The Great Gatsby, and because the bloke they're describing, the reading that Princess Beatrice gave at her sister's wedding, is a con man. He's I think, is he the guy that rips off Gatsby? Oh dear. A little education goes a long, long way. 12:51 is the time. Back to Brexit, M26. Absolute horror show occurring. Some people... Look, I don't think I've got the energy to get cross with you anymore. I just feel a sense of sympathetic despair, because we're all going to suffer together. I'm not going to suffer less than you are if the roads are absolutely log-jammed. I probably, depending on your financial situation, I'll be less insulated than some people from the economic impacts, better insulated than many other people. But it doesn't stop me feeling sorry for you, especially if you voted for it. All these people who have essentially conned an entire country. And I guess silver linings or glimmers of light at the end of the tunnel are very thin on the ground. I'll keep looking. 12:51 is the time. The motorway situation. We've heard horror stories from Northern Ireland, horror stories from hauliers and lorry drivers, horror stories from export managers in Denmark. Where do you go to get the good news now? I don't know, because the government is now turning the M26 into a lorry park. The government is doing it. Work has begun. Robert's in Glasgow. Robert, cheer us all up, mate. It's nearly the weekend.
I'm sorry, mate, I can't do that for you, pal.
What? This is outrageous. How about that famous Glaswegian sense of humour? That's what we need at this point in proceedings.
Oh, buddy, I can't make a joke out of this, and I can get a laugh at anything, mate. I really, really can. I was listening to about the M26. I lived in London for about 5 or 6 years. A long time ago now. Yes. And I was actually sitting thinking, because we used to go down to Felixstowe and along to Portsmouth, and these are massive freight hubs all along the south coast, and of course up into Hull as well, and further on up. This is only the first closure. That's one motorway is only one wee bit. This is going to be all over the south coast. Yes. All these motorways are going to have to get shut, because things that are coming into the country will need to be checked from Europe. And also what we're putting out will also need to be checked, because there's no agreement there anymore.
No, but there still might be. I'm not going to quite jump off that cliff yet, but this is something that, it seems to me, everybody who's ever been involved in importing or exporting goods understands. So then I find myself wondering what the Weatherspoons fella and the JCB bloke thought was going to happen.
Oh, I swear, I listen to your show, to these Brexit people, and I just despair. But I also was talking to my wife about this.
Yes.
The amount of air freight, for instance, that goes out of the country to Europe and basically everywhere else on the planet, that is all over the place. That's in Glasgow, Prestwick, it's in Manchester. These are massive freight hubs just for air freight getting in and out. The same thing's going to happen round about these airports.
This is the moment where I at this point in proceedings find myself thinking, nah, you must be wrong, because there's no earthly way we'd be marching blindfolded towards such a stupid destination. So
yeah, we have. We have, mate.
Well, I'm not ready yet, Robert. Seriously, even with sort of, I have a fairly well documented history of being sceptical about Brexit, to say the least. But even I can't quite believe you yet.
I'm sorry, mate, but you better believe it. I did security at Prestwick Airport for the freight terminal.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago now.
You weren't the guy that chinned that terrorist, were you?
No, I was not, mate, no. But, do you know, the amount of time, even one lorry goes through air freight, it has to get unloaded, everything checked, put back on the lorry, moved to a holding area, then put onto a big conveyor belt thing where it gets stored. Then it gets put onto the plane and flew out, and the same thing happens on the way back for every single thing.
But the reason why I can't believe you yet is because surely the bloke that runs JCB understands this.
Well, you would think so.
The Weatherspoons really fella.
So. Yeah, but I'll be quite brutally frank. I think these people have more of a vested interest on their own political agendas as to what their particular business is, because this affects. The amount I'm now an auxiliary nurse in the hospital. The ward I work on, it's like a wee League of Nations.
Yeah, of course.
You know, there's people from all over Europe, all over the world.
Yes.
Doctors, nurses, cleaners. You know, And I just...
We're supposed to...
talking about leaving.
I know, we're supposed to be frightened and angry by what you just described. There's lots of people from lots of different backgrounds all living together and working together in the same city. And the fella in York earlier, that is his idea of hell.
No, his idea is my idea of hell. I have 8-year-old kids. Yeah. I want them to grow up in a world where they can go literally anywhere and live and work if they want. I'm not saying they should, but if they want to.
Yes.
And he's talking about globalisation. Globalisation, does it have its bad points? Yeah, it probably does. But, God, it's better than being isolationists, sitting there at the border, sitting boo all the foreigners across the river or the border.
Doff cap, tug, fall up.
But as I said, I did security. That's the one thing that stuck in my mind is this is not just the ports. This is every single thing that flies in and out as well.
Listen, it doesn't come to me very naturally, but I'm going to put on the clothes of the gammon and I'm just going to say I don't believe you. I do believe you. I do believe you, but I don't believe you. I do believe you, but I don't believe you. I don't. Robert, we'll talk again. What a lovely call. Thank you, mate. Loads of calls from Scotland today. That's great. 12:57 is the time. I've got a couple of minutes left. Let's go from Scotland to Wales. Jeff's there. He's in Carnarvon. Jeff, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello, James.
Hello,
Thanks for everything you do highlighting the Brexit issues.
I'm sick of it, Jeff. Jeff, give me a hug, Jeff. I've had enough now. Why is it always me? Why is it always me that has to do this? It's like the messenger. I feel like the bloke at Thermopylae who ran all the way to deliver the news of the defeat at the Battle of Thermopylae and then dropped down dead. Carry on, Jeff. Cheer up.
But yeah, I used to live on East Farley Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just outside Mark Mason. I was there when it was flooded, actually, in 2010, the Mason River.
Yes.
But there's only 3 crossings, and they're medieval crossings. So those bridges are literally, they're designed to take carts. They are one
British carts.
Wide.
British carts.
British carts.
Well, that's all right, then.
And on East Farley,
with British horses pulling, the English horses pulling English carts full of English turnips.
Yeah, well, it was built in the Civil War, funny enough, but they are medieval bridges. And when you put Operation Stack in, what happens is all the local traffic, instead of using the motorway cut rounds, all use those old bridges. So they come round trying to get through. They're not designed to take the weight. I'm surprised they didn't collapse during the floods, or these Friday anyway. Teeston, that was closed last year because of structural problems. If you get a lorry come down, which sometimes used to happen because they used to get these sort of like the sat-navs wouldn't work, they get stuck on the bridges, so that closes.
We're losing the phone signal, Jeff. So what you're saying is that the things aren't great now, and when it becomes a lorry park, they're going to be even...
the local traffic will just be a nightmare. We'll just close down Mason at parts of the time.
Is that why you moved to Wales?
Well, partly it is, actually.
Well, there you go. Finally, we found a silver light. We can end the programme on a happy note. Kent is being turned into a car park, but Jeff doesn't live there anymore because he moved to Wales.
Which is beautiful, by the way.
There you go. Fantastic. We've managed to end the week on an upbeat note.